Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Jeff John. We'll be going over the Cult of Jathiman from the Forgotten Realms world setting. Spoilers for background behind an item that I'm not sure even exists in current editions and isn't used in books anywhere, I guess.
This video is going to be on the shorter side because there's a comparatively small amount of information on the cult. Sometimes you get 3+ hours into researching before you realize that yes, that's really all there is. And by then it's too late to change course. So here we go. The Forgotten Realms is a high fantasy setting used in a number of books, video, and board games, and is arguably the most popular official Dungeons & Dragons campaign setting. It's a land of gods and magic, heroes and tyrants, and has a history stretching back literal eons. In the distant past, an ancient, predominantly human empire arose called Netheril. Netheril was a magocracy, a nation full of and ruled by mages. Netheril was arguably the greatest magocracy in the history of the world, but like most ancient magocracies, their ego and drive exceeded their sense and reach. As a nation, they would actually end up nearly destroying the capacity of mortals to access magic thanks to their own rampant and reckless use of said magic, making plenty of enemies along the way, which assisted in the Empire's downfall after they temporarily wrecked magic for everyone.
Somewhere in between the pinnacle of Netherese society and its twilight days, the Cult of Jathiman arose. Made up of Netherese, the cult saw a similar meteoric fall to its parent nation shortly after reaching its own height of glory. The Cult of Jathiman is somewhat unique in that rather than being united in the worship of a god, reverence for a mortal, or adherence to a creed, they were united by a deep hatred of the gods. Which I guess could be a creed. Now, it's worth noting that there are scores of horrific gods in the Forgotten Realms, but there are also dozens of wonderful gods. The cult hated all of them, and, stemming from arguably the most powerful magical nation ever to exist, fully believed that mortals could contend with and even destroy the gods, which is ironic since the stories for which the Cult of Jathiman is most known led to the birth of 3 new gods. The cult itself has only 2 known stories that survive to the modern day. The first is the creation of the Jathiman dagger. Performing a macabre arcane ceremony, 39 members of the cult were willingly, ritually sacrificed. In doing so, the cult weaved powerful magic together, forcing the suffering of their brethren's, quote, violent self-destruction to take physical form as a surprisingly nondescript dagger. The dagger did thrum with unholy power, and specifically had the capability to ignore the defenses that rendered so many gods nearly unkillable.
The cult didn't have long to savor their first triumph. Unsurprisingly, having created a god-killing dagger, the cult attracted the attention of the gods. What a shock. Specifically, the second story about the Cult of Jathiman is the story of how the god Jurgle came down on the cult. Jurgle was, at the time, the god of virtually all things related to death, entropy, the end of existence, and other similarly dark and morose concepts. Jurgle trapped 149 members of the cult in a great colosseum, presumably the entirety of their remaining number, since the cult itself is never again referenced after this event. Once locked inside, Jurgle slowly and individually forced each cultist to implode, then reformed their mangled corpses into ghouls, undead possessing a warped remnant of intelligence that feed on flesh both living and dead. In doing so, Jurgle forced the living to watch in horror as their brethren were slain in grisly fashion by one of the very beings they'd sought to destroy, while simultaneously forcing the undead to watch with twisted hunger, fully aware of who they once were as food was first taken and then reconstituted before their eyes. Eventually, the ghouls fell upon each other and the Cult of Jathiman literally devoured itself.
For Jurgle's part, he took the Jathiman dagger and sometime later used it as an asset to alleviate his boredom. Jurgle was old, even by deific standards, and considering the nature of his job, hint, one of his titles was Lord of the End of Everything, he was kind of done with his job, having been doing it for several dozen millennia. So, when he learned of 3 upstart mortals who planned to ascend to godhood, he started subtly helping them in their quest to gain power, while also subtly guiding them to confront Jurgle himself so that they could take his spot. One of his manipulations of the 3 was to ensure that the Jathiman dagger fell into their hands. These 3 would eventually acquire their goal, stand before Jurgle, and take the powers he freely gave them, becoming known as the Dead 3. This trio of evil gods were named Bane, Merkel, and Baal, and we've actually done a video on Baal before, link in the description. Each were distinctly evil in life and carried that evil on into their godhood. Bane, arguably the most powerful god among the three, was the one who received the Jathiman dagger as a mortal. Like the cult who created it, the dagger has two major stories surrounding it.
The Dead Three came together and made a pact to see each other to godhood by any means necessary, and they had been at their quest for a good while, making names for themselves by the time Bane acquired the dagger and these two events took place. The first event took place in a mountainous region. A shapeshifter, posing as a Minotaur ruler and high priest, had been ruling a Minotaur civilization for around 600 years when they were beset by an army of literally millions of goblins. To combat this massive threat, the shapeshifter summoned an ancient eldritch abomination, which slaughtered the goblins by the millions. For reasons unknown and never discussed, the Dead Three were in the area and chose this time to invade the shapeshifter's keep, stabbing him through the heart with the Jathiman dagger, draining the creature's life away. Oddly, they allowed the shapeshifter to live under the condition that it be bound to the horrific creature it had summoned and simultaneously bound to their service for eternity. It did so, but then the three locked it up in the creature's own keep and promptly left, never to return. No idea why. The only explanation is that this was actually a D&D party that played through it and they just forgot.
The second tale of the dagger is both more famous and more important to the story of the three. One of the defining campaigns in their ascension was their slaughter and subjugation of the Seven Lost Gods, and the dagger played an important role in one of their first kills. The Lost Gods were primordials, godlike elemental beings. One of them was a being called Borum of the Lake of Boiling Mud. For long years, Borum had slumbered, taking the form of a muddy river, but during the Dead Three's campaign for godhood, Borum awoke, signaling his return to life by causing the river to swell to the size of a great muddy lake over the course of a mere 10 days. The three found their way to Borum's demiplane, fought him, and subsequently slew him, stealing Borum's divine power for their own. However, unlike the rest of him, Borum's heart was evidently indestructible. What's more, wounds to the heart spewed forth rivers of mud, and it was believed that should that flow be left unchecked long enough, Borum would reconstitute. So, the three plunged the Jathiman dagger into Borum's heart, stopping up the flood of mud from the heart, though not killing the heart itself.
They then returned to their plane, the normal world, with the heart and buried it on a nondescript island. They burrowed 35 feet straight down through solid stone, placing the heart and dagger in a small hole before sealing it up completely, and then carved a warning message into a cairnstone placed to mark the spot, before proceeding on their quest and eventually becoming gods. Though weathered by time and written in a language so old that only modern-day historians, linguists, or magicians capable of deciphering ancient texts can read it, the stone and the buried heart pierced with the Jathiman dagger remain buried there to this day. The danger of reviving Borum forgotten, but hardly lost. For those who can decipher the warning, the cairn reads as follows. In those days, we three sought power, prestige, and eternal persistence. The plains had opened to us, revealing their terrible secrets. On the fields of fetid Rezamark, the lake of boiling mud, we took a step away from mortality. Borum, patron of anger, breathes no more. His indestructible heart is buried on this forlorn rock, where it must rest for eternity. We shall keep watch over it forever.
And that's basically the story of the Jathiman Cult. Failed deicidists from the Forgotten Realms world. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, do like Jeff John and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos, hit that subscribe button, and if you'd like to see our Let's Plays, follow the link in the description and subscribe to our Let's Play channel.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off.